A very good morning to one and all who have joined here. So welcome to this session on Growth 360 Degree. So where we have our eminent leader, Sridevi Ravuri, joining us to share her experience about the soft skills that are needed for mid-career and senior women. So just to start with an introduction about Women Who Code. So Women Who Code is a global non-profit organization dedicated to inspiring women to excel in technology careers and to stay focused in technical line and helping them in various skills that are needed to pursue their technical career and stay relevant in the technological career. So that is about Women Who Code. So what is our vision? Our vision, we envision a world where women are proportionally represented as technical leaders, executives, founders, VCs, board members, and software engineers. Yeah. So there is a code of conduct for Women Who Code, where it is an inclusive community and we do not have any biases based on gender or all these aspects that are mentioned here: gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, ability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, and all these things listed here. So it is a completely inclusive community and that is about the code of conduct that we have. And we can there are various ways in which anyone can be a part of Women Who Code and start contributing to Women Who Code and gain insights from Women Who Code. Like you can be a presenter, you can be a facilitator, or as an audience. So you can share details of the technologies that you would like to learn so that we organize meetups and sessions related to that. So those are some of the areas in which anybody can get associated with Women Who Code, and there are several expectations on the time commitment that you may have to spend for becoming a leader or a director with Women Who Code. Please feel free to reach out to Bangalore at Women Who Code for any queries. And there are several meetup links and social links that social is for VMware, but there are meetup links that everybody can join, and Twitter, Instagram, and others are also open to all. So we'll share this links at the end so that you can subscribe to and actively follow Women Who Code updates. So there is a flagship program that Women Who Code in association with VMware has started driving. It is the Women Return to Work program named VM Inclusion Tara, which is aimed at upskilling women, I think 15,000 Indian women, to be relevant in the current day workforce and get back to work. If you have anybody who has experience in software industry and has gone for a break due to any circumstance, you can suggest them to enroll to Tara, and they get the self-paced learning platform where they can enroll and learn various VMware technologies and get certified also, and be relevant in the current industry standards, and add it in their resume, that would be a booster in their resume, and get back to work. So this is about the VM Inclusion Tara. For any more details, you can reach out to vmware.com Tara. So with that, I would request Shweta to introduce Sridevi and the session. Thank you all for joining again.
Good morning, everyone. Every problem creates opportunities, and that holds good for pandemic as well. It feels so good to see you all today here. No need of traveling for hours in Bangalore traffic to attend the conference or forum. So that is a boon for all of us. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. I'm Shweta Lakshman Rao, staff engineer at VMware and senior director at Women Who Code. Let's welcome our leader, Sridevi Ravuri. She's the VP for R&D at VMware for the VMware's flagship product, vSphere ESXi. She leads the engineering and QE teams that build the core kernel virtualization engine and guest operating system that powers ESX, which is used by 500K customers worldwide. Sridevi is also Women Who Code Advisory Board member and passionate about mentoring women engineers by sharing her experience and bringing more women into the technical leadership roles. She believes DEI is not only a good thing to do, but truly helps in building creative products. Uh, Welcome, Sridevi, and we would like to have a quick intro from your side.
Hey, Shweta and the Women Who Code team, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here. I wish I was doing this in person, but like you said, I think with pandemic, we have more opportunity now to meet everyone here. Yeah, a little bit about myself. So I grew up in India, as you can guess. I've been, did my B.Tech in IIT Madras and then came here for my master's at MIT. And obviously started as an engineer and became a manager in like 2005. And since then have been, kind of growing in the engineering career, leadership career, right? So my majority of the time has been with VMware. I've been with VMware for about 10 years. And here worked in three completely different domains actually. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah, so on our first, first experience was in a product called Workspace ONE, which is our identity management and mobile applications. So if anyone wants to discuss that, that was kind of like the majority of my time here. And then I also, then I moved into leading our hybrid cloud initiative, which is VMware Cloud on Dell. With that, I learned a lot about infrastructure. And from there, I actually now lead our hypervisor product. So some of you who may know about VMware, VMware's journey started with the hypervisor, where you can run Windows on a Linux machine, right? So that was the beginning, and which led to the virtualization growth and now used by pretty much all data centers and clouds, right? So that is the core hypervisor is what is called vSphere ESX, which provides the virtualization engine. So currently lead the engineering for that. Very happy to say I work with a number of you here, right? And the CP, our platform BU actually has a fairly large team in India. So I work with LG and Shweta and everyone else. So very glad to be here. Happy to answer any questions and also maybe even answer anything else later on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me later. Shweta, you're on mute now.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot, Sridevi. This was an amazing intro. It is great to know all these things about you. So we have some of the questions that our people want to learn from your experience. The first one goes like this. Your view and experience on taking risk in your career and how did you manage? How to formulate decision which does not take us back few years in our career?
Yeah, I'm sure all of us worry about that, right? But what has helped me is to, and now looking back, sometimes as they say, everything is so clear in hindsight. And I know it doesn't feel like that while you're going through it, is to take a little bit of a longer view about your career, over time, like what do you want? Where do you want to be, right? And I think there may be a few detours, and I have seen some people who take a break and come back. All of that is totally fine, right? I think it's about taking that longer term view. But at any point, what I have focused a lot on is it's not really about a risk, but about what you are learning. So I think being very self-aware and kind of evaluating yourself and saying, am I learning in this job, or am I just like being busy for the busy sake, right? And then trying to see if you can either try and expand and learn in that somehow, or maybe you have to jump and go to another role or something like that. So I think if you keep that growth mindset and continuously learn as you kind of go, over time, I think it does pay off. And in the end, I think you'll be okay, right? But I think if we kind of like worry about every second of the day or every year, am I making the right decision, etc., I think that is probably not a very good perspective to have. It's about having some slightly longer term view of your career.
That's interesting. So any challenges you faced while growing to senior leadership, and how did you overcome them? And what it means to be a senior leader and your journey from leader to a senior leader. How will people identify that the transition should happen now? I know it's a lengthier
Lots
question.
of questions there. So let us just talk about, what are the challenges, right? So for instance, let's start. As you can see from my career, I have actually switched at least 3 very different domains in VMware, right? And the reason I did that is also to see if I can learn more at every stage, right? And I think that actually added a risk into that decision, because I'm actually doing something completely different. I don't know about. But then it also helped me gain, okay, because it's a more challenging problem, it actually gives a lot more visibility and hence the growth as well, right? So what is the difference between a leader and a senior leader? In most companies, we talk about director and above as a senior leader, and in some companies, it's maybe senior director and above. But let's talk about what that actually means, right? At a manager and a senior manager, typically you have a sphere of influence, like your area, you are good at it. You also know to some extent all of the team, and also a lot of the product background, right? You typically, a lot of the people have come from within the same product. They actually are very aware of it from a technology point of view. They can actually be involved with the team on the details, etc. But then when you come into the director to the senior director, now you are actually responsible for multiple teams, and it's a very wide and horizontal influence that you need to have. And this causes other challenges. One, you're coming out of your comfort zone. We are all engineers. We are very comfortable when we understand things. Right now, well, you don't understand things. So how do you ask the right questions so you know enough so you can connect the dots and focusing on the strategy, etc. Second, I think there is also what we will generally call politics, etc., that will come in any large organization. And I don't use the politics in a negative word. It's actually about dealing with, there's always less resources. So it is about, how do you present your case? How do you sell your team? How do you facilitate things for your team? Because there's always limited resources. So you're kind of telling your story, and learning to tell that story, I actually think becomes very, very important as you come to the next level. So I think that is the fundamental difference. The third one that I have found mentoring a number of, and this may be slightly stereotypical, but probably applies to both men and women, is about being comfortable with conflict. So a little bit, you see a lot more conflict as you go in. There are a lot of people who will challenge you pretty much at every decision, and you have to, in a way, you have to explain it in a way that it kind of makes sense in a condensed way, etc. Right? So I think that being a little bit more comfortable with conflict and kind of realizing that they are not personally telling you things, it is a little bit more about professional and kind of getting that perspective and being comfortable with it, I actually think distinguishes from going from a that senior manager to a director. And I've seen a number of women kind of stopping there because they are not actually comfortable with that aspect of it.
Are there any unique challenges for women in senior leadership? and how did you navigate it?
I mean, there are the usual ones, which are, to some extent, like I said, because it is about building this, presenting your case and, kind of, and this is never black and white. It is a bit more, it's not so objective, right? There is a lot of perspectives involved here. So, networking and getting to know people, understanding how they think and feel, and kind of making your case, I actually think goes a long way. And typically with women, because we may not know as many people, just by socially or whatever, sometimes that limits it. So we have to work a little bit more harder, I found, to understand, okay, what else is happening, being comfortable with reaching out and connecting and networking, and building those relationships. There is no shortcut to this. For everyone, you have to do it. It's just that it's a little bit harder for us. The second one is, I mean, I think all of you found it, and I'm just going to say it, is in any call, I'm usually the only woman, or maybe the two women or something like that. So whatever you say, frankly, it's a little bit more amplified because people will actually remember it. And so you have to you'll always think twice about, okay, how do I say it? Because it just kind of is very obvious, right? And just because, well, that woman said it, they may not remember my name, but at least they'll know it. So you have to think twice about it. But I think these are fairly, it comes with practice and being comfortable and, knowing. But we have a lot going for us, I think, or at least definitely in our case, we prepare a lot, right? And we can multitask much better, as I can believe. And so, I do prepare a lot. And so I think that actually definitely, gives us an edge.
So very few women, as you rightly mentioned, have reached the senior leadership positions. What has to be done differently? Did you seek any mentors, allies, or others, and how important are they? And how would one choose them? Because many of them are in the phase of identifying, they don't know where to get started in figuring out these people.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, there are very few, because at least in the US, and I'm sure in India as well, there are slightly different challenges. The pipeline itself, right? Like where we are starting from, even in my B.Tech days, I had 2 or 3 people in my classroom kind of a thing who were women. So I think there is definitely that challenge just across every level. And then as with levels, lots of data shows that it falls off the percentages quite a bit. So we definitely we have our work cut out for us. There is a lot to do. Mentoring and networking, as I mentioned, definitely helps. In my case, I think in my case, in VMware, at some level, when people know you, they do help with mentoring though. That's something that we have some programs for it. People who actually went out of their way to set up some, conversations with our COOs, and other BU leaders. So I know them, and get to know them. But I have to say that some of them click, some of them don't. Okay, not every mentoring conversation is equal, because if you don't have the trust on the personal relationship, you just kind of talk at the surface level. Frankly, it's like, do you get to the questions that you want to ask and get to know them, etc. So sometimes it helps to maybe even peripherally be involved on a project with them, so they can understand your strengths and weaknesses. For instance, I used to have lunch with Anne Bingley, who was our SVP and GM for the storage BU before she left VMware. And that was she knows enough about what I'm working on, but she wasn't my direct manager. And so, I could just brainstorm a lot of questions. Hey, what happens in this case? How do I answer this? And things like that. And she would tell me her experiences. So I do really recommend having someone to brainstorm that. There is no one-to-one connection. Okay, did this help, etc. But some perspectives I think will be very useful. And if folks are, at that mid-career and wondering, I am happy to be a mentor if I can help. I know I've had some conversations with Shweta and others. Definitely reach out on LinkedIn. We can talk about your career and where we can help.
Thanks a lot, Sridevi, for being my mentor, because I have learned a lot of things over last 6 months or so, and it is going much better than what it was before I started with this. So here is an opportunity for all of you to ensure that you grow in your career by reaching out to leaders like Sridevi and trying to understand all these aspects. So Sridevi, is there such a thing as a bad move in career, and how can someone recognize it?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a bad move. Like everything with growth mindset, everything is a learning opportunity, right? But I think being self-aware and being really, I think what I mean by self-aware is actually being very honest to yourself. I think that is very important. We have to, knowing like what our strengths are we actually deploying our strengths well, and do we understand our weaknesses, how are we working on the weaknesses, and is this opportunity helping me in kind of improving something or learning something? For instance, when I first joined VMware, I was just talking to Ranjini, right? So I joined the management BU to run a product which was kind of internal facing, and coming from, and that time by then I was a manager elsewhere, and I joined this team. Didn't really quite understand from interviews exactly what the impact was. It's like, okay, whatever. And then I took the role. But then I realized that it was a little bit of an internal facing job, the product. And that's fine for some people, right? Some people are very passionate about kind of tools like that. And I felt like my own passion really comes from, combining and understanding customer use cases with product. And this is my strength and my passion. So once we actually kind of combine it, you actually do much better, right, in anything you do. So I, like after a year, I just kind of just had an evaluation of myself, right? And I said, okay, what else is happening in VMware? And actually found that the end user computing team was working on SaaS solutions then. So this was like the first one there in VMware. Nobody else was doing it. And so I switched, right? And so, but the phase actually helped me still, right? Because I think it also a little bit clarified more about what my strengths are and what I needed to learn. And of course, I learned a lot from that product as well. So I wouldn't call it a bad move, but I think you need to be once in a while at least checking in with yourself and knowing like, are you learning, are you improving, and really deploying your strengths and passion. Because I truly believe I don't want to come to work if I'm not actually applying to something that I actually really like working on.
The next question is around, what are the resources you leverage to stay ahead of the tech curve? Because it doesn't mean that once you are into the managerial ladder, you completely give up on tech. So your thoughts on these lines?
Absolutely. I truly believe that you are only as strong as your technical background. We are still R&D leaders, here, right? But I mean, I'm not, when we say true, it doesn't mean that I actually write code today. I used to, right? It was a long time back. But I am very, so but I really like to still learn about what is happening in the industry. I like to keep myself connected with a lot of at least what is happening in VMware itself, right? So I spent a lot of time in the weekends or in the, in the evenings, kind of browsing and learning. And a lot, because of the moves I have made, frankly, I felt like I've been very fresh, because when you move, right, now you have to learn something. For instance, when I came to ESX, I have no systems experience, right? This is actually an operating system product. And when did we all do operating systems? Like, oh my God, back in like B.Tech or something like that, right? So really needed to go back and refresh a little bit about like, the CPUs and GPUs and network cards, etc. So I think, finding whatever avenues you have to learn at least enough, and then you can dig in when you need to. I actually think it's still very, very important. And I find the virtual conferences, the little TED Talks that people have these days, I actually think go a long way. It's like quick to learn and at least, be informed about it.
So what would you suggest to avoid expertise trap?
Yeah, it's very easy to get into it, right? And I'm thinking when you say expertise trap is, you know something, you do really well, and hence you keep doing more of that, or you're asked to do more of that, in some ways, and sometimes, there are two things that happen. One is, well, we haven't really trained anyone else to do that in your team, so you are the only person who can do it, and hence people think that, well, you have to do it because there's no one else to do it. The second is, I think, where we ourselves haven't realized that, okay, is this taking me somewhere? So again, going back to what I said before, right? You have to kind of check in with yourself once in a while. So the way I advise a lot of people, first thing, let's first identify, are you still in a growth area, right? There are areas where like there is still a lot of constant innovation and there's a lot happening. For instance, now we talk about Kubernetes quite a bit. It's a very, very new field and there's a lot happening. And so you're probably learning. So it's still in that area, but you're still learning. I think you need to, it's completely fine. And so you're learning something new and you're working on it, right? But then if you're not in a growth area and if you're not actually, learning something new, I do think that you have to, expand your skill set. Again, for a career growth, if you're fine and you love that, I have seen a lot of people who like a certain area, very passionate about it, and they want to stay there, completely fine, right? Then you can find, I think the way I have done it, the switches were actually finding something that is a bit adjacent. So nobody will like give you a role where, okay, well, maybe you can like, okay, I'm going to switch software engineering today and become a pilot. That's a very, very different thing, right? But if you want to like, be a little bit adjacent. So for instance, when I moved from the Workspace ONE product, which was the mobile applications I talked about, into the hybrid cloud, the reason they gave me the role is, oh, you have SaaS experience, right? And hence, okay, now you need to learn a bit more about infrastructure. So finding something a bit adjacent where you can bring your expertise and then add on to it, because they are also looking for this other one, I actually think gives you a lot of, push and gets you out of that trap of, kind of a thing. And the same thing happened when I moved to the ESX side. Okay, giving the operations experience, a little bit of the infrastructure side I learned from Dell, and then going a little bit deeper into the infrastructure side. Hopefully that answered the question.
Right. So how can one decide on technical versus leadership track?
Yeah, I get this pretty much every day in my team. And I think it's a very, to some extent, a personal choice, right? I think gone are those days where people have this misconception that we have to come into the management ladder to grow or, do better in a career. I think there are a number of industries, and I mean, just in our own company and elsewhere, right, where you can actually build a very, very strong technical ladder, and these are compensated and given the same importance as the management ladder. So that is, I think, nowadays not that important. Then how do you decide, right? And it really comes down to what you like and do. The way it worked for me was, okay, so everybody, once you get to a certain technical lead, people realize that you have some organizational capabilities, and you do need that, planning, task management, things like that every lead has to do. But is that something that you want to do more of, right? And also the management side actually adds a lot of the people, and don't underestimate this at all. And I've shared a number of my stories, which I'm not going to bore you with that. But the journeys that and the experiences that you have, right, about managing people, it actually becomes about 60 to 70% of your job, which, it's really, it is problem solving, but it is in a completely different way of problem solving. It's actually gaining empathy, of realizing this, like what kind of personalities that you have in the team, etc. And it's something that you don't learn in school, right? So I think you need to kind of like doing this, and but then there is the other side of it, is that you do have a much broader impact. So it's a very personal choice between these both. The way I would suggest going about it, if at all possible, is to see if you can, quote unquote, try it out in a team you are in, right? Someone where you can, maybe your manager is willing to give you that role and see if you like it. And then, you know, having the option to maybe switch back if this is not something that you want to do. And it's okay. I truly believe it's okay, because I think if your passion is technology and you want to really, like, you know, master that and go, and I think you should keep that option open. So anyway, so it's a very, very long-winded answer, but it's a very personal choice in my mind.
So how did you go about this in your personal
I
journey
actually did
when you were in
exactly
this
what I
space?
suggested, because in 2005, I was actually working with a manager whom I've known for at least 10 years prior to that. And so, you know, when he said, so I was a tech lead and totally fine and whatever. And he was, you know, got promoted, and he, you know, expanded his role. So he was like, hey, are you interested? Right. And frankly, if you, I was like, okay, I don't know what this means. So, you know, it was like, okay, let me, literally it said, okay, I will try this for a year. And if I don't know, because frankly, see, I came from very, very deep technical schools, right? So for me, it was like, oh my God, I'm losing my technology background. Suddenly, you know, all of those things. And what if I'm not good at this and I'm actually good at the technical side and, you know, whatever, right? So I think that's what really, and so it was good. I think I did it in a fairly safe environment, and he was a great mentor, actually. And after a year, realized that while there are some, it's a very different job, I did like the impact that I can have, and the strategy and the decisions that I'm kind of allowed to make or have room to make. Now, don't get me wrong. I think on the technology side in VMware, you still own a lot of strategy again, but this is a, you know, a different kind of impact. So I felt I can do this, and well, the rest is history. And of course, then I stopped writing code because I was still trying to write code and keep up with my technical skills, and still felt, you know, comfortable not doing that. And yeah, it takes some time.
So how to handle the situation where you don't see much growth? Is it good to take the detour in that situation and explore other paths?
Yeah, I think it is very important. I mean, one is our own self abilities and how good we are and what are we learning and are we working hard, etc. And so let's put that aside. But really, there is, I mean, the saying that right place, right time, right? You do have to be in the group that is amenable for growth, you know, and I think that is very important. A lot of the times I see people who are just kind of doing the same thing and are like, you know, are growing, they're learning, but if the overall group doesn't grow, or if the overall company is not growing, there's only so much that'll happen to you, right? So I think it's very important to identify that, and then figure out if you can, if, okay, fine, if you're, I think it's okay to move even horizontally or taking the step down, so to speak, because overall, if you're in a growth journey, you will catch up. That's not the issue, frankly, right? So I am always thinking that, you know, am I in a growth place? Because it's not just me, right? The whole org has to move up, and I think we need to be aware of that, frankly.
So any tips and tricks to improve visibility? Because most of the case it happens that they are working from the remote locations than the headquarter. So any pointers on those lines?
Yeah, I think it's a much harder problem. First, let's talk even without remote, like how do you improve? Because, you know, these are very big companies, big organizations, lots of projects happening. And how do we, you know, how do we become, you know, somewhat visible, etc. Right? So I do think that it needs to come with a lot of built-in enthusiasm, frankly. I mean, one is, of course, you need to have a manager who is at least helping and facilitating and providing some opportunities. And in most cases, people try to do that, but if not, you can always find some mentors and allies, etc. But from yourself itself, I think you have to find some opportunities where you can, present your work. Like for instance, in VMware, we have like sprint reviews, or something like a hackathon or pitchathons, etc., which help to give these other venues where you can become a bit more visible, so people notice, right? It doesn't come for free. That is my point, because it is a large organization. And sometimes what I have found also is people will, frankly, in my own org, ESXi is about 500 people org, spread over multiple geos. And I always wonder, what else is happening in the rest of the orgs, right? Because some projects I know about very closely, something those are very high priority, etc., constantly watching it. And then I find from left field, somebody is doing some really good work, somewhere in Beijing or in Bangalore, or, in Sofia. And some of these site visits that we do actually help, but some people actually reach out to me, and send me an email. Sridevi, I worked on this, and I think it's really fun, and I enjoy doing it. Their own passion comes through, and I definitely look at it, right? Because and I think those kinds of things, I think taking some initiative, I actually think it's helpful, because really all we are trying to do is to improve the product. So if anybody has other ideas, we are definitely open to that.
It's almost 10 p.m. at US. I see the same enthusiasm, the energy, like a morning. So what can you talk about what keeps you motivated, energetic, as you have to go through the day-long meetings, but still on those lines?
Yeah, I obviously work very hard, but I also have my own balance. One thing I want to say here, all of you probably have very young kids. You didn't see me 10 years ago. I was looking very worn down, okay? No. So maybe you have hope, right? Because my kids are actually older, and I keep telling everyone, and like when I chat with my friends who are like my age group, we are always like, okay, great, now is the time to really focus on our careers. And I think that's coming, and be aware of that, right? But it's at the stage I am in. I have two boys. One is in first year in college, and the other one is in middle school. So it's a little bit, I get more time than I think mostly. I don't know if you have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or something, or a baby, right? It's a very different scale. But what I do, Shweta, is even with all these really long Zoom meetings, etc., I do believe in like exercising and taking like time for myself. Like even now, okay, I'll try and end the meetings at 6 o'clock, and then have dinner with the family, and just actually take at least half an hour to just kind of do some workout and things like that, just kind of like calms it, and then try and get back for anything else in the evening. So finding your own balance and doing something for yourself, even for like 20 to 30 minutes a day, I think goes a long way, frankly.
So how did you master the art of saying no without sounding rude?
Who said I don't sound rude? I think it's actually a hard, it comes down to really being a bit showing some empathy, right? It's not about just saying no. We are saying it for we have given it enough thought. We thought this through, and these are the reasons, and this is how we are doing it, right? For instance, if it is someone's idea and we didn't fund it, or we didn't, I'm assuming those are the ones you're talking about, right? Or like someone came in with an ask about their career or promotions, etc. I do think that, it goes a long way is really being a bit authentic, really authentic, and being empathetic and kind of like talking it through, I think goes a long way. This has helped me all through, even even when I have to hear no from others, and trying to convert their no to a yes. I think it helps to really understand where they are coming from and making a case.
So how about having a balance between personal time and the professional work? Was it better when you were IC or the senior leader?
Oh, I am now so old, I don't remember my IC days. Just kidding. Like I said, I've become a manager in 2005, right? I think, so it's still a long time back. Yeah, it was better then, only because, like for instance, I actually, when I first joined in VMware, and this was like, I was a first level manager then, I would actually go to the gym from 12 to 1, like the lunchtime, right? But then like when I started having teams which who are like much more global, I don't get that time of the day because now I have to actually meet with them. Now I cannot take the time in the evening, etc. I think the flexibility is more when you're an IC, because here, well, you have to meet when the teams are working, things like that. So I think that's probably a slight difference. The stress is also different. I think definitely the stress levels, I mean, obviously you have stress even as an IC, but I think this is a different kind of a stress because you actually really impact someone else's life. And so you want to be, and I think that that can get to you sometimes. And I think you have to be very aware of that. So I think that is very different. But again, the same statistics work, right? Get into a problem solving mode, think about it, be empathetic, be authentic. I think all of those things actually help a lot.
So how to handle office politics or dynamics? Do you see any difference how male versus female handle these kind of situations?
Yeah, I don't want to generalize the male versus female but I do think that, like I said before, because we are so few, I think we stand out with anything we do. So sometimes it adds a little bit to the conscious, being conscious about it, right? But like I said, I think politics in a large org, and politics not in a negative way, but I think is inevitable because of the few resources we have, and that you have to work across the aisles and kind of work with various people, etc. I think it helps a lot by building relationships and understanding the challenges that this other leader may be having, and then trying to work with them, right, in telling the story and making it in some ways, like how we say in the management side, or you want to make it feel like that is the answer that they would have come to as well. So that's why it actually helps to understand what are the challenges they are actually facing, and kind of explaining it from that side, I actually think goes a long way. For instance, when I was doing the Dimension project, which is the hybrid cloud initiative, we were kind of a startup in VMware, right? So we were actually setting up this new cloud service. We needed a lot of help from Dell. We needed a lot of help from the other business units within VMware. And these are like really large business units. And they're like, who is this fly on the, this really small team that is coming and asking me for stuff, right? And I think kind of really building those relationships and trust and kind of showing them the value and working with them, I think went a long way. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but the empathy, I think, helps quite a bit.
Have you ever faced imposter syndrome while stepping into a new field? So how did you overcome it?
I can't say that. I mean, for instance, when I got the ESX role, because it is so far off from my expertise, I was, initially, just obviously very worried. It's like, okay, what am I doing here? Do I know? And can I build the trust and things like that, right? And again, going back to the basics really helped. What I realized was I don't have to, there's nothing urgently I need to fix here because its product has been working for so long. it's fine. I don't have to go shake off things and do something here, right? That's great. But I think there are things that we do want to turn the wheel a bit. And so I said, okay, I'll take about 3 to 4 months, build trust, learn quite a bit. And so literally did hundreds of one-on-ones with pretty much everyone in the team, getting to know what they're working on, getting to understand their perspectives, etc. And that actually built relationships, and my own knowledge grew, and then, kind of got over that. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it impossible, but yeah, definitely the worry that, okay, is the right role, am I here? So.
So with the changing technology landscape, how can one best align oneself in the future roles? Is it advisable, or is it better to be an expert in their own field?
That's a very hard one, though. Again, it really depends on your strength, Shweta. Like some people, right, are very good at really digging deep and getting to the nuts and bolts and being an expert at it. This is a skill, right? Like for instance, if you see on the ESXi side, I mean, people can actually walk you through every instruction set in a CPU and things. And that is their passion. This is what they've done. And this applies to every field, everything that you learn. This is just a way of learning that some people have. Some people, I think that's your strength. For instance, for me, when I first is the horizontalness. Like people can understand and connect systems and go a bit breadth, like we can actually tie it to the use cases. We understand customers. This is our passion, or some people's passion. And so you have to kind of identify which one are you, like, from your own personality. I think then you can form a path for yourself, really. Again, doing something that you're really good at, something you're passionate about, goes a long way. There's no shortcut to that, frankly. So I think understanding your own personality of that, I think really helps first.
So these days, even ICs have to showcase their leadership skills, like planning, risk-taking, ownership, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So at this phase, like how would people try to learn or understand what are the important or the key leadership skills which they have to, and from where they would learn these skills?
Absolutely. I actually think the first one is communication, right? Communication, telling the story. And this is, I think, goes a long way. I find a lot of us, I mean, really had to learn. And when you're an engineer, you can explain the nuts and bolts very, very well, but sometimes connecting it to a meaningful story that everybody can understand. I think this takes practice. And I think that's a skill I advise like pretty much all of my team to learn. And we do a lot of workshops and things like that to train engineers, right? Then the second one is actually taking that ownership of a problem, right? And I think that goes a long way, in the sense that you're not doing because somebody gave you a task to do. And this is where the passion comes in. This is where kind of going that above and beyond, I actually think, is very important. And what that means is you're working on something, obviously you did a really good job, but connecting it, right, to say, okay, hey, how will this actually be tested? How will this be automated? Or how will the customer actually use this? Maybe sitting down with the product managers and kind of understanding that. And also these days, how will it actually be observed, in the SaaS case? Like, how will this be monitored and metric? And, and more so, I think goes is also, how will I know? And I keep encouraging the team right now, which I find very strange for the on-prem products, right? Because we haven't been in that, is how do you know that in the end your feature was actually successful? So have you added enough telemetry into this, just so like, okay, we thought it was a great idea. Did it really work? And did people actually use it? And I think asking these kinds of questions and getting it a little bit more than the code you're writing, I actually think goes absolutely a long way in building that kind of a leadership on the technical side.
Starting as an engineer or programmer, what triggered you to transition to the management role?
Yeah,
These
like
are
you mentioned earlier, I was a tech lead and I was in a team where the manager, kind of got an expanded role, and hence he thought, hey, I think you're ready. You should be able to do this kind of a thing. So I was kind of one of those things where, I don't know, the right place, right time or something like that, right? And and like I said, I gave it a shot for a year and felt like, okay, I think I can do this and I like it. And so that kind of kicked off the career, definitely.
any more questions from the audience? Anybody like to ask any questions? You can post here. Or any questions from our team, feel free to ask.
I would like to ask one question, Shweta.
Good.
Sridevi, when we switched to new role, like recently you moved to the ESX team, right? So what was your focus for the first 3-month phase and then the 6-month phase? How did you plan that transition, though it was not adjacent? So ESX is more on the infrastructure side. So what was your focus areas in the first quarter and the second quarter?
Right. So I was always so obviously when you're coming in at a leadership role, so it's like first thing I wanted to understand is from my own senior leaders, like from the GM and like Raghu, etc. Like what are they seeing as issues for ESX? Like what are some things that we needed to do? By the way, this is a really big ship. This is not like a small ship. So when we move, the entire company has to move and 1,000 ecosystem partners have to move. So we have to be very, very careful with this, right? So, kind of try to understand that, and everybody called out that, okay, we are deploying in the cloud. We need to think about the cloud operations and bring that mindset to the ESX, team. So that was one of the overarching problems. And so then I went about kind of like said before, to say, before we solve or provide solutions, which I think we are all generally like to do, I said that I think I should take a lot of time to really learn this product and the team and what makes them tick. I think understanding the culture of the team, right, what motivates them, makes them going, I actually think goes a really long way. And then you build the trust. So I literally spent 4 months. I mean, I actually talked to my manager and I said, hey, I don't see anything super urgent problems to fix here. So I'm just going to take the time, and actually talk to a bunch of people. And it's pandemic and all that, so I needed to do it over Zoom, all of that. Talk to a very 360-degree view, right? Talk to a lot of the employees and also our partners, the support teams, so that I can get a customer perspective and then started laying out a few ideas that we think can convert that into this observability kind of ways, right? So again, I don't think we are there, like we didn't come up with all the ideas, but like at least some 3 or 4 projects that we can kick off. And also took a route to say at least one of the projects during this learning curve that I would run myself. So I actually asked one of my senior leaders to be my advisor, just so that when you are kind of getting your hands dirty, you actually learn a lot more, as a manager, because people tell you a lot of technical issues, etc. And so I think that also helped my learning, about the product. So that's kind of like the tack I took. And I think I was able to lay out some, new projects for the team for the next, for this quarter, which will be done. And then I have a few more that we need to work on later, etc. So yeah, definitely no shortcut. Actually, I spent a ton of time reading lots of academic papers, so I can actually be familiar with the space, a bit more. Now, obviously, I'm not an expert at the operating systems, but at least I can, relate to the challenges that the team has.
Thank you,
So
Sridevi.
the other question we have is some pointers or guidelines on how to improve the network so that they help in growing in their career path as well.
I mean, you guys are all doing a great job already. You're on this sentence. Because really, when I started, we didn't have these kinds of groups also, right? I think these days we get a lot of opportunities. I am absolutely thankful for everything the Women Who Code teams and everyone else, is doing in this space, right? Yeah, it's hard because there are like obviously the networks that I built were, folks I know from college, just kind of like being in touch on what they're working on and things like that. And then at work, kind of meeting, getting a little bit out of the comfort zone and reaching out to people for lunch and things like that, and just kind of taking that time and talking with others, I think is something that we have to do. So it is, I think it's very to me, because while I talk a lot and I can be social, it's not something that I do very naturally. So because it's like, oh, okay, is it helping my job right now? I'm busy with that, right? And things like that. It takes some effort, frankly, and some people do much better than me, frankly, at this. I don't think I'm that good at this.
Sridevi, we
So-
have a question here. Hey, Shweta, sorry.
Go ahead, Nilima, go ahead.
Sridevi, question I had is LG's question was, how did you do it once you are into the role? What are the steps you took, right? But my question is the step before that. How could you, how did you manage, or how open were the people when you were shifting from end user computing, which is like completely on the high level of the application layer, to the core, the ESX, or the actual core level, the hardware levels of it, right? Like the change, right? People should have the trust, and should we don't have much I'm not sure if you had prior experience on that or not, right? But how to sell ourselves to be able to know that we can do good or learn it and be ready for that role, right? Because if you have to change career, or if you want to switch the gears and move a little bit here and around, right? That's one thing that is being asked. Oh, you don't have the relevant experience or stuff like that, right? So just wanted to understand from your perspective, how did you overcome those expectations, or how did you make sure you can convince them that you are ready, sorts?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Nilima. So, like I mentioned before, I do think that it is slightly different in a management, like leadership career, versus maybe like as a technical lead, where some deep expertise in that area is already needed, right? Things like that. So I think it's slightly different. But I do think that in the end, some principles definitely apply. So how did I go about doing it? Frankly, I didn't set out to do it. Like I said, I was actually trying to find something where I had a potential growth opportunity. Okay, so I kind of felt like, okay, I reached my peak here and I'm not really learning as much something new, so I'm going to find another role. And I reached out to I went about our career site and I found a role, and I went to that GM and said, hey, I am interested, and obviously they said no. So it's not like, they'll just give it to you, right? And they basically, obviously in a very polite way, but it's like, hey, we already have people. We are looking for some really strong public cloud experience, etc. Things like that, and they've also, again, this is within the company, so they've done some background check and realized, okay, that I do have pretty good reputation, at least in UC and things like that. So anyway, so I think, but that helped though. So what happened was, after that, another role came up, and then he actually then reached out to me and said, hey, remember you reached out to me? Now I think you can probably help, because you do bring this. So again, it's an adjacent, because they needed the SaaS experience, which I had, but I didn't have the other one. And so it was more like, then they were willing to apply the aptitude thing, like, can you learn and, be useful, things like that, right? So my advice is, even if you think you won't get the role, and I was like almost 90% sure I won't get the role, I think just reach out, okay? Because I think it actually helps for a lot of things. One, people will tell you what you're probably lacking, and maybe it helps to then go back and learn or present it better. Maybe you had it, but you're not presenting it well. And, kind of brush up a few more things so that you can talk about it better. So I think it goes a long way. And then maybe and you are in the background, so they will figure out if there is another role that comes up slightly adjacent, then we'll reach out. And I have done that many times. A lot of, like, I would get some tech leads who would reach out to me, hey, I'm interested. At that point, I may not have something that's actually a fit, but then I'll keep in mind and I'll say, okay, I know I'm looking for this really strong infrastructure experience, but also I need, someone who has a strong CI/CD experience, and that I cannot find, and that's okay. I'm going to compromise and then give them this role, right? So my advice would be, it's okay to get a no. I think you should, reach out and see what they'll say, hear the feedback, I think, and be a little bit objective about it. I think we'll go a long way.
Wow, we are.
Can I just go for a law question? Would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah, one last question. Please go ahead, Kalmini.
Hey, thanks, Sridevi. This is amazing eye-opening perspectives that you have given us. I have one question on, sometimes I have in my career been very, I have felt that I have been sacrificing. I don't know if that's the right word to use. Is it always mandatory to look something for you in the job, or is it okay sometimes you don't find that and still continue? If you see, what is there in for me, is it always a good thing to look at that, or should you? How would you pace that?
Yeah, I mean, see, in the end, yeah, I think. I don't think like every day we have to say, okay, what's in it for me, etc. Right? So we all know that, you are building a bench strength. We know that you have to build a reputation. We know that somebody has to speak for you, when you're going for the next. So you have to do the current job, well, right? I think and we have to show the passion and do what you can and bring your 100% to it or more. But I think where we get stuck is we're just so busy doing it. Sometimes we don't step back, I think. And so at least, I tell myself at least once in a year or 2 years, I am going to step back and, and see if I'm learning. And I feel like if I'm still in the right environment and I think there is potential for learning and growth, I'm going to stay, it's totally fine. Right. So I don't know if that's what you're asking, Padmini, but I feel, it's not like a daily thing to worry about, am I getting something out of it?
Thank you, Sridevi. Thank you.
So we have one last question, Soumya.
Hi, Sridevi. This is Soumya, and I've joined VMware last November, but I really wanted to relate to the community that you've been talking about, Sridevi. So thank you very much for the session. Really great insights. So some of the questions that I asked on bad moves and being the critic, sometimes what happens is I have felt this, being my own critic has put a lot of pressure on me. So how do you see yourself being light at you? Because this perfection kills sometimes, and it is not the others who even judge you. They not would even bother about the mistakes that you would have done, but the self-critic is really bothering the wellness at least. How do you think we can overcome that, and how do you think you have seen through that in your career, Sridevi?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Soumya, and I think I've had at least a few people that that were in my team that I would say, I think you're doing good, and they would be like, well, I don't think I've done this well, or sometimes it's a little bit like your your own harshest critic. Yeah, I think it's actually important to also, that's why it's important to, I think, get some like feedback from honest feedback and trusting that feedback from others, right? Sometimes your own voice may not be enough, and developing some relationship with your own manager or peers or like someone that you can trust, where you can kind of bounce these ideas and thoughts, and getting that balanced perspective, actually helps. Sometimes you actually discover some surprises about yourself, like until somebody told me, frankly, I never realized, like somebody would, about 10 years ago would say, hey, you actually present fairly well. And something like that. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't realize that was my strength. I was more like, because I was a very technical person. So I'm like, super about the engineering side, right? I was like, oh, okay, so this is a strength, then I can actually invest in it. So I think being like the cliche, right? Being a little bit more 360 about it, and building that trust and getting some feedback from others. And you do something, you can ask people, hey, how did that go? What did you realize? And getting some honest feedback, I actually think goes a long way.
Thank you so much, Sridevi. Thank you. Over to you, Shweta.
Thanks a lot, Sridevi. We are already 7 minutes late, but the session was not like an hour plus. There were lots of learnings, there were lots of inputs and amazing questions from audience. Like we had more than 30 questions or so. And you helped us understand lots of aspects from the leadership perspective, the career transition, and all these things. The final one on the VM inclusion, Tara.
Yeah, thank you all for having me here. And I really hope to do this in person, maybe when I visit my team in Bangalore, next. But I also want to call out all the good things that Women Who Code in India, is doing. Along with VMware, we have this program called Tara, which is, for upskilling, right? So we're sponsoring about 15,000 women. And I think, Shweta, we are already at about 10,000, right?
Right.
So, spread the word. This is for anyone in your family, and I have sent it to everyone in my family on all my WhatsApp groups. Anybody can take advantage. Like I said, it's the pipeline issue as well. So first we have to fix at that level and try and improve, and then only we can get to the other levels. So anything you can do to spread the word, please do. I think it's a great program. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sridevi. LG, over to you for the thanking note.
Thanks, Shweta. Thanks so much, Sridevi, for sharing your personal journey and inspiring us through your experience. As the title of the session goes, you actually gave us a 360 view of all the phases that you had gone through, starting from when to choose the right, when do you want to choose, how to choose, and when do you switch from IC to manager, and how to have this work-life integration and tips on how to get visibility, especially when we are all remote team, right? We are in India, and keeping yourself up to date with the changing tech space, which is very important for you to understand, make good decisions, and also a little bit on expertise trap, though it can be a personal choice where people still want to do it what they want. The insights you shared about how to be successful in a new role, being comfortable with conflict. I really like that word which you mentioned, and taking feedback in a constructive way, nothing personal. And most importantly, reach out. Let people know your aspirations. Getting a no is okay. Don't stop there. A self-reflection once in a year. Don't do it every day, but just to see, it's like a progress card for you. It's like an academic progress card, and then see how you have done so far. And asking feedback could be from peers, or it could be from your manager or the leadership team. I think there's a bunch of learnings what we did in this 73 minutes of learning. This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you
also, I would
much.
like to thank Shweta, Shweta and the entire Women Who Code team who made this happen, who made this, even though you couldn't visit in person, they made this virtual visit happen. This has been on the cards for a long time, and the questions also from the audience has been amazing. And then we have very good audience attendance as well. Thank you so much.
Be happy to connect, and please reach out on LinkedIn and be in touch.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining this session. Hope to reach out to your team network on the VM inclusion, Tara, as well as feel free to reach out to us, as Ranjini mentioned in the initial part of it. If you have any kind of topics that you want to hear from us, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sridevi.